All right, hello everybody. I know that it's really weird to not see each other's faces, but you guys have been going today, so you're probably pros at it, as we all sort of are in this new virtual environment. So my name is Tabitha Rossbroy, and I am the 2020 National Teacher of the Year. And you may not know this, but maybe you do, because you're early childhood people. I am the first early childhood educator to be given this honor, which is incredible and unbelievable and so exciting for me that I get to help further the work of early childhood educators and everyone in our field this year. I care about early childhood so much. It's what I've always done. The last 11 years I've spent teaching preschoolers and working with families, and some working with 0 to 3 too also. So it's just so exciting for me to be here with you. And you might not know this, but my dad was born in Ohio, so I have a little bit of a connection there. I've never actually been, but I would love. He was born in Wickliffe, Ohio. So I'm really excited to be your guest today. So we're going to get started. Hopefully I can move forward here. Maybe I need to click. There we go. So I want to talk to you a little today about stories. So as a teacher of the year, we get trained a lot on how to deliver our story, how to share our message, but I think a lot about why stories matter. I kind of consider them the great equalizer in our communities. I've learned over years of trial and error that if you want to connect with someone, you tell them a story that makes them laugh, that makes them cry, or something that they can see themselves in. I read once that stories help us make sense of the world and share that understanding with others. People are constantly searching for meaning, even if it's unconscious. Brains are pattern seeking, and stories help us see patterns too. When you're connected, you forge community, and stories are one thing that helps us do that. So I get to share some stories with you today. And first up is Malaysia's story. So in my second year teaching, just a little baby teacher, Tabitha, I had a student in my class, and her name was Malaysia. She came to me when I was teaching a blended program Head Start of 3 to 5-year-olds in Salina, Kansas. My 3 to 5-year-olds had varying needs, and I was still pretty fresh out of college, armed with big ideas that I could make a difference in a child's life just by practicing all the things that I'd been taught if I did it just perfectly, which all of those things were invaluable to me, but they were only the tip of the iceberg for what I needed to know to be Malaysia's teacher. So actually that classroom, that group of kids that year was the first group of kids to challenge me in a way that left me wondering at the end of every day, what I could do better, but also marveling at what went really well. And so this is Malaysia. She was an adorable, curly-haired, hilarious ball of energy. And at first glance, you might not see the problems that plagued her, but you saw them when she was frustrated or when she was sad, and when she tried to complete tasks that seemed manageable for her same-aged peers. When she was presented with a situation that she didn't know how to handle, she would scream or cry or throw herself on the ground or run away from staff, or she would generally, avoid anything that was non-preferred. It was like she was only comfortable when she was in motion, but it wasn't just like little motion that you can, solve with a fidget or twiddling your thumbs. It was flopping around on the floor and doing somersaults. Or you see that loft behind us in one picture. That was one of her favorite places to run up and escape during our circle time. And so, she was overwhelmed a lot of the time by emotions. And when she was overwhelmed, that aggression that she had did increase. And it was hard to believe that such explosive behavior could come from someone so small. And I think that we think that a lot about our small kids. Like, have you ever seen a 2-year-old throw a tantrum that lasts and lasts? They're kind of the Energizer Bunny of tantrums. And it kind of defies logic, and it confuses caregivers, and a lot of people aren't sure how to manage this big feelings coming from little people. And I kind of have to laugh when I think about all the things that I thought were going to solve, problems that she was having in the classroom. But for the first several months, my staff and I worked so hard to get her to comply, right? I thought that was the trick. She needs to be able to do what I asked her to do because I said she needs to do it. But Malaysia had a history that I didn't fully understand the impact of at that time. I'd been told a little bit about it. One thing she did was when she tried to focus on an object or a face, she would kind of cock her head to the side in order to be able to see it. And this was just one side effect of the shaken baby syndrome that she was affected by. Her mom was in high school when she became pregnant with Malaysia, and her mom, Trinish, has gladly given me permission to share this story, and she hopes that people learn from it and see the struggles that she has overcome both as a child and both their whole family, and she's so happy that I get to help share Malaysia's story. But Trinish worked to complete her high school diploma, but when Malaysia was just 8 weeks old, she was horrifically abused by her biological father. He shook her, and those injuries from that shaking ranged extensively from the shaken baby syndrome to skull and rib fractures, and most babies didn't survive those types of injuries, so no one knew what to expect as Malaysia developed. But her mental health struggles started to come on strong by 3 years old, and at that age it was really hard for Trinish, her mom, to find a psychologist who was willing to address them. So undiagnosed, she was in my classroom, and she would have random unprovoked fits of, rage and extreme emotion. And her mother and I spoke multiple times a day, sharing insights and guesses about, what was the function of this behavior. So at 4 years old, after a year in my class, Malaysia's mom did find a psychologist that was willing to work with her, and she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and ADHD. And honestly, that didn't make a difference in how I viewed Malaysia, but it did help me shape my interventions. And the doctors that she worked with didn't know if Malaysia hadn't been shaken as a baby, if she would have still had these same issues or not. So it was kind of just a toss-up. But she did start to thrive after getting medication that helped and continuing the interventions that we put in place in collaboration with her family and her doctors in the school. So what Malaysia didn't need was a Band-Aid. Okay, or a teacher who was so overwhelmed that they were just ready for her to get out of the classroom and pass it on to somebody who could manage it better. She really needed a community of support to rally around her and her family during this really critical time of her development. And so that's what we did. I didn't know the impact that we were having by the efforts that we were doing at that time. I just knew it was important to help this little girl in my class. And I did that with my school community, with Malaysia's mother, and with the other mental health professionals in her life. So she was in my class for ages 3 and 4. And during that time, Trinish, her mom, who's pictured here, this was at my wedding. They came to that. This was right after I had left Salina. And I was so excited that they could be there to celebrate with me. Just having someone in a family who means so much to you able to share in that joy it was incredible. So Trinish excelled. She put herself through college. She worked a consistent job. She attended parenting classes that I got to help teach at my school. She worked with a local anti-poverty coalition and was able to take herself and her girls on vacation to Disney World that year with the money that she saved. And she eventually did graduate with a bachelor's degree as a single mom of 3, and she's now pursuing veterinary medicine. But in the classroom, the things we focused on that really made a difference and started to make a difference after that first really tumultuous half a year or so was that relationship building. We did intentional activities that included eye contact and appropriate physical touch and smiles and playfulness that not only made Malaysia feel safe, but they made her mom feel safe too, and let her know that she could trust someone with Malaysia's care. We created visual routines and expectations to tie our words to something concrete for Malaysia to understand. These are some examples of things we used for her and for our whole class. When I was putting this slideshow together, I had to laugh at how blurry the one in the top was because it was like 2011 and I probably took it with a potato. I was like, I can't even read those words. But, phones have changed our lives for the better in that way. But these were some things that helped Malaysia ask for help and helped her make choices and know what the rules were and know what to do when she was having these big feelings that she didn't know how to manage. And this was sort of before my foray into special education. I had a special education degree, but at Head Start, we contracted out with a co-op, and so I wasn't in charge of any of that. So I was so excited that I remembered to take pictures of these things from years ago because it reminded me sort of how far I've also come in my instruction. And so that might be something to tell your students or people that you work with. that they can do to sort of document things that worked for them, things that maybe didn't work for their students, so that they can use that to help themselves professionally and help others later on. So one time a day that Malaysia really struggled with was nap time. And it was when students were expected to be quiet, and I taught a full day program, so it was my plan time. So if the kids don't go to sleep, I don't get anything done. Malaysia really struggled to rest. She had lots of energy, but one thing she loved was for me to pat her back and to sing 2 songs on repeat, which were You Are My Sunshine and Ba Ba Black Sheep. And so I did that because that was the only way that she could get herself calm enough to restore some of that energy that she was using. And I would have done anything to help her get calm, but I had to start learning those songs in Spanish to give myself a little bit of variety. So this was Malaysia after 2 years, and then at my wedding after 3 years of growth and routine and reflection and singing those songs on repeat before she went to kindergarten. You know, we worked so hard together, and she had come so far. She was managing most of her day with only occasional support. The photo that has Malaysia with her with chocolate all over her lips was that her family got a new Habitat for Humanity house, and the support that I was able to give them and my school was able to give them, that Head Start as a program, our community, really helped set them up for success in the future. And Trinish always says that it changes the course of their lives. A couple of years after Malaysia left my classroom, I got a message from Trinish that said, Malaysia heard You Are My Sunshine on the radio on some random commercial. And she said, I know that song. When I was in my Tabitha's class, she'd sing this to me as I laid down. Trinish said, I love that she still remembers and cherishes the moments that she had in your classroom. And that right there solidified for me that every moment of adversity and every challenge we faced together was absolutely worth the investment. So, knowing Malaysia's story, I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity as National Teacher of the Year to advocate for the field of early childhood education and to celebrate what it does for all of those who get a chance to participate. There's been kind of a narrative in the country that early education is somehow less important than what's taking place in K through 12. And I think that this narrative is shaped largely by assumption. And the most common assumption is one that many of my closest loved ones have even said to me. It must be fun to just play all day, said a lot of people. I'm sure that many of you have heard that about the field before. And you might look in a preschool classroom and see toys as far as the eye can see. You can just come and look in my classroom closet if you ever have any doubt. I actually had to move my entire classroom a couple of times, and I laughed out loud when I saw how many boxes the district sent me to pack. They sent me 20 boxes, which I'm sure sounded like a lot to them, but guess how many boxes I ended up packing? I'll show you. It was 80. I packed 80 boxes, and that doesn't even include what I had at my own house and what I had in storage or any of my furniture. And I just find that so hilarious. And I took this picture. I think my husband took this picture because the amount of stuff that we deal with day to day is just so expansive and just huge, right? The materials in early childhood. But for a second, I'd like you to do this kind of thought exercise with me, and I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to do this. I want you to think about a lesson that you've learned in your life, and it could be anything meaningful. I'm going to give you these 20 seconds, and I'm going to pull up a slide for you to answer this question with me, okay? While you're thinking, you can open up a new tab or a tab on a different device. Sometimes I like to do that just like on my phone. And go to menti.com and enter the code at the top of the screen. And I'm going to click on that too. So there's the code. It's 2051013. While you're thinking about the lesson that you learned, answer, which way did you learn this valuable lesson? Was it sitting at a desk, listening to a lecture, or was it through conflict or experience? I think I know what the answer was going to be, but this is kind of a valuable thought exercise to do. I'm just going to give us a few more seconds for anyone else to answer that might want to. So look at that, 100%, just like I thought, through conflict or experience. That is not something I'm surprised by, because I do think that we learn through experience and we learn through conflict. If you're familiar with Dr. Becky Bailey, she always says, conflict is our friend. And I truly, truly believe that. I'm just going to go to right here. So I repeat that to myself every time I start feeling annoyed or impatient, when I have an idea of what I think I'm going to get accomplished in my classroom, but then that's thwarted by a disagreement amongst my preschoolers. Because this is how they learn. It's okay to stop and have time for that conflict, because that is just as valuable as anything I had on the lesson plan. So I can't always manufacture conflict, but I can offer an environment where children are challenged to grow through their experiences. And what better way to do that than through play? So, I'm so sorry, I lost my place here. So in my classroom, you will see some traditional teaching, so like at the table or on the floor, but where the most valuable learning takes place is in open-ended activities that are heavily based in play and exploration, both inside and outside. One of our favorite things to do is go jump in the puddles with our boots and our umbrellas and just have a great time learning about the weather and learning about what water does and how it moves, and really just getting some of that gross motor movement. So this is how children learn best, through learning how things work by experience, not by me telling them. So I'm just their guide. That's really how I picture myself as an educator. And I think back to all those assignments that I did in college, about my philosophy of education and how I viewed the educator in the room. And I think knowing what I know now, that has definitely changed somewhat from what I might have answered then. But I really think that kids learn how things work by experience, okay? They need things in their hands, they need to try out different ideas, and they need to experience that conflict, like I said. This isn't an original to me idea, which you guys all know. It's based on years and years of scientific research by well-known theorists and, carried on today by more modern researchers. But the thing is that people think this is just how little students learn, but it's not. It's how most students learn. It's how most people learn. And I think that we as a country have lost sight of how all children learn in the wake of preparation for things like high-stakes testing. And I know you've heard this quote before, but I really do live by it. Fred Rogers said, "Play is often talked about as if it were a relief from serious learning. But for children, play is serious learning." For me, play is serious learning. So yes, it takes me 80 large boxes to pack up my classroom. A big part of my job is potty training. And I guide children through the most important developmental moments in their lives. One of my favorite quotes that I have hanging in my classroom as a gift from a student says, "From tiny seeds grow mighty trees." Early childhood educators are the beginning of our work with families as a school system. They are the beginning of the classroom experience. They nourish those tiny seeds and they build strong roots that contribute to the health of the tree for the generation to follow. So my little Malaysia is now in 6th grade. Her mom keeps in touch and has reported that some other issues have surfaced through her education that range from her having anxiety or other difficulties with learning, but those are largely in relation to her infant trauma. Her mom says that if she didn't have preschool, she doesn't think they would be able to survive those issues now because she would be so much further behind. We know that those struggles she's having now do have some armor around them that we started building when Malaysia was really young. The family support and that wraparound service that we were able to give them really helped those problems that she might face in the future be manageable now and keep that circle of trauma from repeating. We know if you're here at this webinar today, you know that consistent quality early childhood programming can reduce the need for services later on in life. Because when we identify needs earlier, we're able to reach students when their brains are developing the most rapidly, before they're 5 years old, just like we did with Malaysia. I like to imagine a world where we equip children with what they need before it's too late. And just to put that into perspective, someone said to me in the last couple of months, the politicians of tomorrow are in our classroom today, and that somehow feels super relevant for 2020. So Malaysia's story, while it is unique to her, doesn't stand alone. Okay, there are lots of kids in our country and around the world that are going through trauma and hardships and lack of resources that affect large populations of families everywhere. Only 34% of 4-year-olds in the United States receive free public preschool. That's 1.5 million students, give or take. Now, I know that sounds like a lot, but that actually leaves about 3.5 million students potentially underserved. Some states move far ahead in this race, and some 4-year-olds might have access because their families can afford private school or some other version of preschool, but millions of children go without any early childhood experience at all, and that's not acceptable to me. We further the education gap and the likelihood of academic and social struggles later in their lives when we're not reaching them when they're young. So one piece of Malaysia's story was her trauma, but another piece of her story was in my classroom. Both experiences changed her life forever, but her time in my classroom made the next chapters in her life ones of strength and hope. That's why the work we do is so important. We're working to make an early childhood education experience a part of every child's story. So we're going to turn our attention, while we stew on this, to one more minty interactive piece here. I want you to think for a moment about what it is that you think that makes early childhood so great. Okay, we're all involved in the work of early childhood in some way. I want you to think of a 1 or 2 word response, and I want you to go to this website here. Let me click on it. And enter the code at the top, because we're going to do like a word cloud, so I can see what some of your responses are. What makes early childhood education so great? It's nice for me when I'm able to hear from you guys a little bit when I'm not able to see your faces and sort of read your response. So I really appreciate you being interactive here with me today. I'm going to go to and do it. Into.com. Relationship, I love it. Isn't it so fun to see how it grows? This is like playing solitaire in the very end when you get the last card. Now that I think about it, I should have played some background music for you guys. Next time. Wow. Okay. I've seen connections, relationships have appeared many, many times. Growth, impact, foundation, connection, respect, engagement, play, influence, possibilities. Oh my gosh, I am going to take a picture of this and share it out because I love those the words that are getting mentioned a lot, seeing a theme. I will definitely share that out when it's all finished. Okay, we are going to move back over to our slide here. Okay, so quality early childhood education has all of those things that you guys mentioned, and I loved reading that because that means we're kind of on similar brainwaves here. In the past decade, I've learned that it takes all of those things you mentioned, many pieces of the puzzle, to make early childhood education wonderful and amazing and the incredible place that it is. But I kind of want to zone in on 3 things that have impacted the lives of my students so greatly. And those things are cultivating relationships, partnering with families, and play. I like to call those sort of my ingredients for success in the early childhood classroom, and I really hope they can be ingredients to success for all ages. But we're focusing on what early childhood does right today and celebrating that. So, you heard a little bit earlier, my public school pre-K is housed inside of a nursing home and retirement village. I actually don't know if I mentioned that, but I know that it's in my bio. So I love to share that with people because it's such a unique setting. My preschool is actually housed inside of the nursing home, and this year we will not be in that building because of the pandemic. And I am actually on sabbatical anyway, so it worked out okay, but it's just very bittersweet that we're not going to get to be there, and you'll see why after you see this video. So hopefully you guys can hear the sound. If you don't hear the sound, someone alert me.
My name is Jesse Hatfield. They call me Grandpa Jess. I'll be 91 years old next week. Greet the children every morning when they come in at the quarter late. And it's a very, very wonderful feeling. It's just a real neat experience.
I want to say hi to all the little kids that are going to see this. My name is Cecil Thompson. This year I'll be 94 years old. I've been here 5 years. And I was sure glad when they started bringing these young children in so we could be with them. I enjoy them. I get to see them every day. I meet them when they come in. I'm the great-grandfather for 2 great-grandkids, but they live in Chicago. I don't get to see them, but I see these kids here every day.
Well, my name is Betty Long, and I'm a grandma to the kids. I enjoy coming down and reading to them on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And usually on Tuesday and Thursdays, I come down and play with them. And they're just very enthusiastic, very, very loving.
I've been here at Cumbernauld about 3.5 years. I'm a former teacher in public schools and at Southwestern College in Winfield. And I've had experience from the kindergarten through college. But I've never been more challenged than I have been with the little bikes. They're tough, but are they sweet?
What do you think, Roger? What do you like to do with the kids?
With the kids? Oh, I just like to be around them and interact with them.
Your next question has to do with what it has done and its impact on my own life. I have to tell you that until you're 90 years old, you really don't know how you're going to feel. But I felt several years ago like I had already done anything I could possibly do. I'm almost ready to say that I gave up on an awful lot of my interests, my activities, and I have a little trouble expressing this, but I wake up in the morning so totally different than I did just a year ago. I have a reason for getting up. I have sung all my life, but I've never had the feedback that I get for singing for these kids. Now I see little 4-year-old kids responding in a way that I have never received before.
Ed, do you want to tell the story about what a kid asked you
Oh, yes.
about the war?
You know, I always ask the children, do you have any questions you'd like to ask me? And yes, they do. And sometimes they kind of get off track. But I was kind of taken aback by this question. I said, I was on a battleship in the Navy in World War II. And they said, were you killed in the war? And I said, I don't think so, I'm here. So there are questions like that, and when they're asking, you never know what they're going to ask, but they're so cute, and they're so serious. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that last part still really makes me laugh. We know that preschoolers say the most hilarious things, but I love to share this video with people, and I love to show this unique opportunity that we've had to partner with this beautiful untapped resource in our community from which all parties benefit. A lot of what I do is talk about how my students have benefited, but from this video you can see how the residents of Cumbernauld Village have benefited too. We had a local student, a local high school senior at the time last year, make this video for us, and he's now in film school and doing awesome. So if you want to give him some views on his YouTube channel, you can go share this video from there. But the important thing I kind of want to focus on is that in this setting, my students' empathy and love for others has grown more than I ever anticipated. They've built these incredible social skills and respect for people of differing abilities. Social emotional learning has always been a really huge part of what I focus on as an educator. But this partnership with the nursing home gives them more real life experience than I could provide on my own. You know, the grandmas and grandpas, the volunteers that live there, either the apartments or assisted living or in the healthcare side, they are really a part of the fabric of our classroom. We have 6 scheduled times in our full day for them to be with us. And there's really not a time of day that one of the grandmas or grandpas or more, 4 at a time usually, are in our classroom or we're not doing something with them. And I'm missing that so much right now, but I know it's more important than ever to keep everybody safe. So you'll get to hear me talk a lot about, how wonderful it is, especially because I'm missing them. So because of the volunteers that I have in the classroom, I'm able to work with smaller groups of students, which positively affects the academics of the kids in my class, which you guys know. That is something that I couldn't give them on their own. They're all getting read to every single day, one-on-one, which again, I couldn't do on my own with the 16 students in my class. There just wasn't enough time. At the end of last year, all of my students were on grade level or above in the area of phonemic awareness, and that has never happened in my decade of experience. You know, we're always shooting for 80%, but I really believe because of the extra love and attention and connection they were getting in my classroom because of the volunteers, not because of anything amazing I did or a technique, but because of the time that was spent on them. They were able to get where they needed to be and truly be ready for kindergarten. Now, there are a lot of benefits to tapping into what your community has to offer, and many pre-K and early childhood programs across the country have relationships with outside entities that really strengthen what you're doing in the classroom. And there are lots of ways that you can make that work, and this is just one example that does that. And the cool thing is that because so much of our focus is spent on building empathy and kindness for the grandmas and grandpas, that it naturally carries over into our regular classroom setting. And my students are kinder and more connected to each other than they ever have been before, which also helps me do more of that academic work we need to focus on. Those interpersonal skills are, crucial to success in school. And I just wanted to kind of share, you see the kids here in these photos, you see them connecting, and you see them giving eye contact and making meaningful relationships, not only with the grandmas and grandpas, but with each other. And these are a couple more. Red-haired grandmother over here, that's grandmother Jerry, and she said all year long she wanted to go down the slide. And on the last day of school, we checked with the nursing home, and the CNAs helped her, and then I stood at the bottom and caught her, and it was just one of the most joy-filled moments that I love to look at that picture. I need to get it framed. So that is sort of what I do every day when I'm not traveling as National Teacher of the Year. But that leads me to our family partnerships. So I got my own start at Head Start, and through that I really learned the impact of family partnership. And I think many educators think of what we do as very separate from home life, and they're definitely different settings, which we're really figuring out during this pandemic. But we're each such important parts of the story and the child's life that if we can work together with families to make both settings strong and positive and full of support, that effort pays dividends down the road and right now in the life of children. Parenting doesn't come with a manual. That is something my dad says every time he makes a parenting mistake. And I laugh and I say I know that that's true, but I also know that we're highly social creatures. We need our parents to survive, and our parents also need love and support. Because parenting doesn't come with a manual, we need that even more. There's no test, or there's not a ton of planning that can go into that, aside from, seeking a degree in child development, which most families don't have the time or the resources to do. And so that's where we kind of come in as teachers. I don't see our roles as separate from one another. I see us as definitely stronger together. And so I realized that sort of my knowledge of developmentally appropriate practice, when shared in a loving and non-intrusive way, was super valuable to the families in my class. So this started kind of super small for me, just being a part of whatever efforts my school was already doing and trying to spearhead some of those. But I found that the more I got to know my families, the more I understood the needs of their children. So I began to do things like hosting monthly family nights in my classroom, where I would, rally community support and get grants to do things like a family literacy night or a pumpkin carving night or a painting night. And this served kind of a couple of purposes with my intention there. And one was that it created a positive environment that families could come to for free to connect with their students and build relationships with them. But it also gave me the opportunity to lovingly share some of the expertise that I had in child development. So like at literacy night, I got to model reading a story with meaningful investigation, and I passed out bookmarks that they could take home and that had open-ended prompts that they could ask their students when they were reading. Each kid got to take their own book home. The kids helped me plan snacks. They decorated the bookmarks together. I got to talk to them so much about their own child's development and how to foster those really important pre-reading skills that they need for kindergarten. And I do enjoy doing these things with my whole school. That is a big thing for me too. But being able to work directly with the families in my class helped me give some more individualized attention to what I knew their needs were. So when I moved to Winfield, the families I was working with had different needs than the families I worked with at Head Start. And one huge thing that I've learned is not to push my own agenda, but to be actually responsive to the collective need, right? I might think that I know what families need and what parents and caregivers need, but really I need to do a lot of focusing in on what their individual needs are, just like I do with my students, and allow room for growth there. So I'm not offended when my plans don't go as I had expected them to, because again, that conflict and that disruption is where we learn best. So I started talking to families at the first parent-teacher conference, which I sort of hate that word, that phrase, parent-teacher conferences. I would love for all schools to go to a more inclusive, something like family conference or something like that, but that is a future conversation because I don't have a designated home visitor or anybody working directly to connect families with me, so I kind of have to balance all of this with my other work, but I promise that it's like so worth it. So sometimes those moments of connection with families have led to individual supports in the home with what they're needing, but once it led me to host a family book study with interested parents. So I did it over the book Easy to Love, Difficult to Discipline by Dr. Becky Bailey, and I love conscious discipline. If you know me, I sort of live and breathe that in the classroom, and I got a grant to get these 20 books, and I opened it up to the families in my class, and then if I didn't get enough, I would open it up to families outside of my class. And I partnered with a local service club at the middle school and their advisor and these young kids who would come and do childcare for me every 2 weeks while we connected with the families. And I would design activities for the people who were providing childcare to do with the students that mirrored what we were learning with the parents. And it was just this like incredibly therapeutic time of connection and love and sharing and growth that I got to experience with my students' families. And that is the closest that I have ever felt to the families that I was serving. And the picture here on the right is just, those are a few of the families that we got together at the park later that summer and just celebrated the end. So during the pandemic, I didn't realize how much what I would be doing would actually be family coaching. So this experience actually really prepared me a lot for what was to come. And this was a couple of years ago, the book study. I've also done some work with Reach Tiny K, infant and toddler services in students' homes. And that also helped me a lot. So little ones aren't designed to be able to receive content from behind a screen. And I'm just going to click to this. So a lot of what I did during the first shutdown of the pandemic was to coach caregivers on how to implement a lesson, how to ask questions, and how to celebrate when they achieved something. I spent time helping families set up home learning environments with pictured here like visual schedules and routines and social stories, and helped them create boundaries in their homes that made them more conducive to learning. And I really connected with them. So a lot of my videos that I would post to my platform were here parents, here's how you would deliver it. Here are the things that you would ask. And then I would do individual check-ins with each family as much as I could fit into the week, because I knew that it was important to still connect and see their faces. And so I'd love to, if you guys want to reach out to me about some of those ideas, I would be glad to offer that too at a later time. And I just want to run through sort of my next point though before I run out of time here. So purposeful play is the next thing that I want to talk about, kind of my third recipe for success in an early childhood classroom. So we have to cope with problems in life, right? And one way that I did that was through a sense of humor, which led me to getting involved in theater in college, which was specifically improv comedy. So if you're not familiar with improv comedy, it's like, whose line is it anyway? You know, things are all made up on the spot. There's no script. You take suggestions from the audience. And the more that I prepared this year to speak about early childhood, the more that I realized how valuable that experience was for me, because it really pushed me to be uncomfortable with the unknown and to thrive in that environment. And you'll hear me jokingly say pretty often that teaching is 10% preparation and 90% theater. And I'm not really kidding when I say that, because you really have to be willing to make a fool out of yourself in the classroom sometimes and have fun with your students, because that's how they're going to learn best. But I'm going to take it in a different angle in the remaining time that we have here and talk about why play is so important, not necessarily what it is, because you guys are all professionals and experts in your field and you know what play looks like. But it's important not only for our earliest learners, but for all ages. So if you think back on that thought exercise we did a little while ago, you learned a valuable lesson. I can also guarantee that probably some of those experiences also had to do with something really engaging where laughter and discovery were present. And so I just want you to know that it does things for all people at all ages, because I'm learning lessons every day still, even though my brain is fully formed by now. So one thing that play does is decrease worry. Okay, that is a big benefit of play. And it also fosters connections between people and relationships, which is kind of serving two purposes, not only with your students, but maybe the people that you work with. And some people think it's a sign of immaturity to be playful, or maybe you're childish, but in reality, it really helps us be vulnerable, right? Sort of like improv comedy did for me. And it accelerates the intimacy in our relationships. And I think about that a lot when I think about my husband, who's a very silly guy. And maybe not publicly, he's an introvert, but once he wanted me to sing this terrible blues song in the most blues voice that I could manage. And I was too embarrassed to do it in front of my husband. And it took some coaxing, but when I did, we laughed and we connected. And in that playful moment, we grew closer. And that's what we're doing for our students when we create these opportunities for them, and what we're doing for ourselves when we interact in those two. Play is also a stress reliever. Being a person is a lot of work. Being an adult is a lot of work. It's exciting, but it's a lot of work. We aren't really wired to do as much work as we do. And I say this as a person who easily works, 60 hours a week and loves being busy. We're stressed out. Our kids are stressed out. We have to practice slowing down a little bit and not just relaxing in front of Netflix, but actually engaging in something that makes our brain work in a different way. When I was a kid, I was the student who was begging my teachers to play games, like Jeopardy or Trivia or the Fly Swatter game. And I thought it's because I was competitive, which I am, but it's really because that's how I learned best. And that's how my brain needed to work in order to synthesize some of that information. So play also increases our ability to solve problems. Playful situations encourage us to think outside of the box, and that builds the muscle that we need for critical thinking that helps us solve problems with our loved ones and build empathy and understanding, the ability to see others' point of view. Now think back to what I said about politics earlier. This would be a really beneficial activity for them too. Play also is an investment in yourself and in your well-being. For my preschoolers, play looks like many different things. Sometimes they use toys as they were intended. Sometimes they're using a broken basketball hoop as a suit of armor. I've seen them pretend tiny pieces of tissue paper are cupcakes. They do the most delightfully absurd things that I've ever heard. And I see them make mistakes during this, and they make mistakes broadly. Sometimes they cry, and sometimes they laugh, and they make mistakes over and over again, but they keep going. And as an adult and as older children, we can provide that for them too. Sometimes it looks like just saying yes to an opportunity in your life and with your students. So often we shut down ideas before they really become a train of thought. But you can invest time, meaningful, intentional, away from your phone, away from other forms of technology, time and play with your kids, in your class, with your coworkers. You can be present and engage with those situations. And it can look like a million different things. It can be dancing or singing or picking up a new sport. And I'm not saying you should be a comedian 24/7, because that's not also the case. One of the great things about play is that you don't have to play 24/7 to reap the benefits, but it's not unproductive. It's not a guilty pleasure for our kids or for us. It is vital to our joy and to our critical thinking and our emotional growth. That's what we're doing for preschoolers, and that's what we should be doing for all students. So just think about in the coming weeks, what does play look like to you as an adult, and what does it look like to younger and older students? I could talk about play forever and how it's so important, but we do have to move on today. But if you have me back sometime, I would love to do that. So just to wrap us up, I want you to know how I celebrate the work you do and the work you prepare others to do too. I hope that today reminded you of the important purpose that you play in the life of future educators and in their students to come. If you want to connect with me on social media, I'm on Twitter and on Facebook and on Instagram. You can Google my name if you want to contact me. It's pretty easy to find me out there these days. But I know that we did also want to leave a little bit of time for questions and answers. I saw a few pop up in the chat box. I'm sorry that I couldn't get to those right away without being super distracting, but I think that we have some time for that now.
Wonderful. So as folks are formulating their questions, please add those in the questions and answers box. But we did have a few reactions and comments that I would like to share. One is, Tabitha, you are an ECE treasure. Congratulations on your 2020 National Teacher of the Year Award. You represent us well.
Oh, that is so sweet. Thank you so much.
Next, very inspirational story. What a great reminder of what we are really working towards as the workforce behind the workforce.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wonderful. And then 90% of brain growth takes place by age 5. The gaps are set by then too. It is the only time to be proactive instead of reactive as educators to students' individual needs.
Absolutely. Totally, totally true.
Yes. Well, Tabitha, I so appreciate your powerful message. I heard so many things and stories that you shared and appreciated and chuckled about the self-care, you know, learning the songs in Spanish for your own mental health.
You have to do what you have to do, right?
And just being, you know, an inspiration. And so much in this time that we have such uncertainty, it's so nice to see those that have embraced that.
Mm-hmm.
Another comment, great presentation. Thank you for what you do. Keep doing what you do.
Thank you. You guys are like an awesome audience, right? You're just celebrating me. I'll take this all day. Thank you so much.
Right. Well, and if I have to say there's a benefit to the not being in person, it's the standpoint of the video, and it pulled heartstrings for sure. And I think that's the reason they came up with the I'm not crying, you're crying kind of thing, because Cecil and his story, my goodness.
And, you know, I've seen that video so many times and I still tear up. I'm like, oh, it's a brand new story.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Well, awesome. Any final thoughts or questions for Tabitha for today?
I just saw one, Belinda. Thank you. I just saw Belinda in the chat. I love future educators. That's another huge passion of mine. I actually got to teach a college class last year before I was named Kansas Teacher of the Year, and I love that because I really want to get my foot in the door. I taught fine arts in the elementary school, but I really want to teach classes about trauma-informed teaching and about brain development and self-regulation. So that's where I'm headed, I hope, after this.
That is awesome news. I know we'll be excited to hear how you advance in that area.
Well, thank you for having me today, and you guys take care. Reach out to me. I love to connect. I'm definitely like a people person, so I'd love to connect with you again.